Hey, it's Lara here with your weekly Witchy Wednesday astrology forecast. And this time it's for the week of January 16th to 22nd, 2019. So, are you feeling are you feeling eclipse season? I am, and I think a lot of you are too. You know, the eclipses impact us in different ways depending on the specifics of our chart and sort of, how in tune we are in general with these things. But um, I'm going to get to sort of where this is happening for each of us at the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. But I'm going to really go into some details about the overall of this particular eclipse that's coming up for us on late Sunday night, early Monday morning, depending where you live. And this is the full moon total lunar eclipse in Leo. Also happens to be a super moon, just meaning that it's very close to Earth, and a blood moon. And the reason for that sort of reddish hue is just because of the way that sort of dust particles are reflected, right? So it's also known as the wolf moon. And because it's that time of year here in the Northern Hemisphere where it's the dead of winter. And, in sort of the olden days, it was the time of year when it was said that, wolves were howling at the moon out of hunger kind of thing. So we're in the snap of January cold over here. And it can be a tough time, right? So particularly emotionally for a lot of us, and eclipses in general, and this one in particular, can have us really feeling that. So I'm going to get into all that in a minute. Before I do, I want to say thanks so much, of course, for being here. I really do appreciate it. I appreciate your interactions. I appreciate your comments, your likes, your shares, subscribing to the channel, all of that. And of course, if you want to get in touch with me about a reading, then please do that at my website. The link is below. And you can also connect on Facebook and Instagram for more regular updates. I recently had a few messages from people, like private messages or emails, that I had done readings for kind of over the holiday season around that time. And I got some feedback this week. And, it's just, this is why I do this. I love it. And I love the reactions. And I love how astrology can just, it sees us. I know that sounds weird, but it's just, it can get really to the core of things, of who we are, right? And enlighten us as to what we're doing here and all of those things. So if you're interested in that, I'm not going to go on a big long spiel about it because I have lots to say about the eclipse, but then please do reach out. Okay. So let's start just by saying where the moon is at. So right now, the moon's in Taurus as I'm recording this video, but later today it's entering Gemini, and then it's entering Cancer on Friday night. Now, I'm using Eastern Standard Time because that's my time zone, but if you're listening from somewhere else, then adjust accordingly, right? So, excuse me, still getting over this cold a bit. So enters Cancer Friday night, and then it will move into Leo on Sunday, when we will have that total lunar eclipse. What the sun will be moving into the sign of Aquarius on the same day. And so happy birthday this week, Aquarius. It's your birthday time now, right? So just as the sun tips into, just as the sun tips into Aquarius, the moon enters Leo, and we have this eclipse because Leo and Aquarius are opposite each other in the chart, right? And lunar eclipses are full moons. They always happen at a full moon. And that's when the sun and the moon are opposite each other in the sky. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about all of that as we go through here too. But so just in general, let's just talk for a brief minute here about Aquarius, because the sun is moving into Aquarius, right? So I always like to say a little something about that when the sun shifts signs. So Aquarius is this very future-minded sign. And it's the sign of the collective, right? The sign of humanity kind of thing. Aquarius is this very emotionally detached energy. So it's like the observer that's sort of standing on the sidelines, you know, observing this, you know, the collective of people kind of thing. And able, with that sort of bird's eye view, able to kind of have this future vision of the ideal that could be, right? But it doesn't get too emotionally attached. It's a cerebral sign, right? A sign of it's an air sign. Air signs are signs that have to do with our thinking largely. So a sign of the mind in a way. The thing about Aquarius is it's really interesting. It's quite a paradoxical sign in many ways, because Aquarius is known for sort of being the rebel, right? The individual. But it's the individual among the crowd, right? We don't lose sight of that piece of the puzzle, the crowd. It's this energy that wants us to all be equal, but not necessarily the same, right? Equal is not necessarily the same. And Aquarius knows that. So the other thing, Aquarius is a fixed sign, so they can be really sort of rigid in their beliefs, in what they think is best for everyone, kind of. And, you know, it's really beneficial. Like, Aquarians can really harness the higher vibration of the sign by connecting to their emotions and just understanding the world of emotions, right? Tapping into emotional intelligence and learning about that, because it's something that they have a bit of a hard time with. That Aquarian energy, as I said, is quite detached emotionally. It's more intellectual, right? And so tapping into that sense of unique specialness, which is the opposite sign of Leo, can really help to balance out the sign. So, speaking of Leo, this is the sign that this full moon, total lunar eclipse is happening. And incidentally, you'll be able to see it in certain parts, like in North and South America, and I think in sort of parts of Europe too. And of course, that depends on kind of the weather, right? If the skies are cloudy, that kind of thing. But it may be observable. Ooh, I'm a wreck over here. I'm dribbling on myself. Having a bad hair day too. That's what freezing cold weather and indoor heat will do to you. So anyway, getting back to the point. So the eclipse is happening in Leo, and it's the last eclipse on the Leo-Aquarius axis until the next time the eclipses come around to the signs of Leo and Aquarius, right? So it's kind of the grand finale of sorts. And it may really be a grand finale because Leo energy is big and bold, right? It likes to put on a show. And so we may see that. We may see that out in the world, politically, socially, you know, even world events or weather events, who knows, kind of thing. But we may see that out in the world somehow. We have been seeing it over these last sort of 2 years because the eclipses have been in Leo and Aquarius, right? Over these last 2 years. So this is not necessarily new energy. It's something that's been playing out for us over the last 18 to 24 months sort of thing. So it may reach at this point like a fever pitch, a culmination. And full moons in general are a culmination, right? They are a release of some sort. And then being an eclipse, that energy is amped up. And then there's, another conversation with Uranus that's happening that even amplifies that more. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself right now. So let me just get back to talking about, these eclipses that have been happening in Leo and Aquarius over the last 18 to 24 months. Pairs of eclipses, right? Eclipses always come in pairs. And like we just had one a couple weeks ago, it was a new moon eclipse, and now we're having the full moon eclipse, right? That's the way they always happen. And they happen in relation to the nodes of the moon. So the nodes of the moon, when they shift signs, the eclipses change signs as well. And they can overlap some though. So the eclipses in Leo and Aquarius have been happening 18 to 24 months, and this is going to mark the end of that cycle. And then, those signs kind of get a break from the eclipse energy and until it comes back around again, right? So sometimes there's usually 4 eclipses a year. But sometimes there can be more. And like in 2011, there were actually 6. So that was a pretty significant year of changes and upheaval. So with this eclipse on the like I said, it's either late the 20th or early the 21st, depending on where you live. We're finishing up this eclipse cycle, and then we're shifting into the Cancer Capricorn eclipse cycle. We have already had eclipse activity. As I said, eclipse families can overlap like that kind of thing, where we're finishing up one as we begin the next cycle, right? And we get a bit of a flavor of what that next cycle, a bit of a preview of what the next cycle is going to be like. But so we had this new moon eclipse that we had on the 5th of January was in the sign of Capricorn. And so the nodes of the moon have shifted to Cancer and Capricorn. So now the eclipse cycle is following. And, it's interesting when I was thinking about this, the moon's nodes, as you've heard me say before, or if you've listened to other people that work with the nodes of the moon, evolutionary astrologers, largely, but the moon's nodes are reflective of our destiny line kind of thing. My teacher, Mark Jones, calls it the destiny line. And so, the north node symbolizes very, very simply our trajectory, what we're moving towards, what our soul is here to embrace more of in this incarnation, right? And then the south node, it's those things that we're really well versed in because we've been there, done that. It can represent like multiple past lives kind of thing, what we've really become masters in. And that doesn't necessarily, that we can be masters in being, all kinds of good things, or masters in being some things that maybe aren't so great either. It's not really a judgment. It's just an area or areas or life themes or energies that we are really well associated with. And so the task is to take what we've learned there and move on from there and not get stuck in that south node energy and move more towards our north node. So, the nodes give us clues about our sort of destiny, if you will. And the eclipses, as I mentioned, happen in correlation with wherever the moon's nodes are traveling. So the eclipses, as I see it, it's kind of like this, major events or major turning points on our destiny's path kind of thing, right? Like course corrections, sort of. So, this, again, finishing up this cycle in Leo and Aquarius, anybody who has significant Leo and Aquarian and or Aquarian energy in their chart will be coming out of this cycle where they really felt the eclipse energy, and there may have been a lot of shifts and changes and surprises and adjustments and that kind of thing happening for them over the last 18 to 24 months, right? But of course, this depends always on your own personal chart placements. All of us will feel eclipse energy to some degree. Some eclipses will impact us more than others, depending on our personal placements. But, you know, everybody has Leo and Aquarius in their chart, right? So whatever house, for example, Leo sits for you with this upcoming eclipse, that will be the area that really stands out in terms of the eclipse energies. And I want to remind you that, like any event astrologically, the energy of the eclipse isn't necessarily just felt on the day. In fact, eclipse energies, they sort of ripple out, they reverberate, right? So oftentimes we feel them in the weeks leading up, and the major events and things that are often associated with eclipses can happen leading up to. You know, case in point, I mentioned to you that I lost my dad in mid-December, in the couple of weeks leading up to that Capricorn eclipse, right? Which was on the 5th, and Capricorn is associated with authority, the father figure, among other things. So you see, that's just an example. And I don't want to freak you out. That doesn't mean that somebody's going to die. Okay, please don't think that. Eclipses don't have to be a bad thing. I'm just saying it's a potential. And so I'm just trying to give you a real life example. And so you see how we can feel these energies in the weeks leading up, and then they reverberate out into the future. So we tend to feel these energies, you know, several months after the eclipse as well. So in the case of a lunar eclipse, this is when the Earth is sitting between the sun and the moon. And in the case of a total lunar eclipse, the sun, the Earth, and the moon are in perfect alignment. They're lined up perfectly, right? And so the moon itself doesn't actually give off any light, right? The moon reflects the light of the sun. So when the Earth passes between and cuts off that sunlight, the moon goes into darkness, total darkness. And it's kind of like, I've used this analogy before. It's like when the light gets turned off and you're in total darkness, and then somebody flips the switch back on, and it's like the room suddenly, you know, it looks different. Or maybe you noticed something in the room that you hadn't noticed before. You know, or you were looking in one direction when the light went off, and then you were moving, you know, whatever, through the house trying to find a flashlight, and when the power came back on, you're in a different room, kind of thing. It's kind of like that. So let's talk a little bit about the moon in general, right? The moon represents our deep emotional self. The moon is about our emotional security. It's about our comfort zone, right? And our subconscious. The moon sort of represents the people as a collective, right? Our ancestors, our family, our tribe. Also the mother archetype. And it's a very feminine energy. So full moons in general can amplify all of these things. Full moons can be very emotional. We get, you know, many of us get very emotional around the time of a full moon. And, you know, women's cycles often sync up to the full moon. So all these things at the time of an eclipse are reaching, as I said, a fever pitch, right? The full moon energy is amped right up. And there is this major releasing or culmination point happening at the time of a full moon and an eclipse. Even more so, it's like this cosmic reset button. So some things are ending and other things are beginning, like is normal for a full moon. But this is happening on an even grander scale because of the eclipse, right? So just to give you another sort of real world example, the eclipse on the 21st that's coming up here It marks the second anniversary to the day of the Women's March on Washington in 2017, which was, the biggest single day protest in history. And, so that kind of gives you an indication. Maybe we're going to see something big happen around that. I don't know. It's a possibility. So lunar eclipses are like full moons with that plot twist energy that's just amped up, right? You've seen that Facebook meme where it says, when something crazy in life happens, you just yell plot twist and move on. It's kind of like that. So, when the energy of the full moon, or when the moon's energies, are being eclipsed, it's a time to move inward for self-reflection. It's like, the moon's going into darkness for a time, and she's going like, okay, here's some stuff that needs dealing with. Here's some emotional baggage that needs dealing with, here's some stuff I need to stop kidding myself about, some things I hadn't seen before. Here's some ancestral trauma that needs dealing with or releasing, some feminine wounding, some emotional baggage, that kind of thing, right? So all those things can come up for us at the time of an eclipse, of a lunar eclipse in particular. And at the time of an eclipse, we may encounter some sudden news, some sudden realization or truth. And so it's not really the best time to be making major life choices or decisions or changes at the time of an eclipse. Now, don't freak out about that. If you have big plans that you've had in the works for a while and something, some major day, like you're getting married, on the day of the eclipse or something, don't freak out. Those plans have been in the works for a while. That's fine. You may run into some surprises. I've been at a wedding before where there was a major power outage, for example. I don't know if it was an eclipse. It'd be interesting to look back and see. But, something can happen. It doesn't have to be something bad. It could be something amazing. Or it could just be that you're getting married, right? Because those big life events often happen around the times of eclipses as well. So major life events like births, weddings, sometimes, people's transition on, major job changes, total shifts in our perspective even, the arrival of big news, that kind of thing. So again, this depends on a number of factors, and in particular, what's going on in your own personal chart too. And one other thing I wanted to say, before I get into more kind of specifics and then speaking to each sign, is eclipse cycles, like the bigger cycles, happen in 19-year cycles. So what I mean by that is 19 years ago, from the day of this eclipse that's happening in Leo, an eclipse happened in Leo, same day, same degree kind of thing. And so if you look back 19 years, you may get a sense of, similar energy playing out. It's not going to be exactly the same, but, perhaps a similar theme. So again, this is not necessarily new energy to us because this is the last in this cycle of eclipses. So it may be something that we're already familiar with. We can kind of go, okay, I know what this is about. And when I speak to each sign and talk to you about the life area that it's happening in, you may go, oh, okay, I know what this is about, right? And so then you can be a little bit more prepared for it. But because it's an eclipse, we can never fully know. And also because this eclipse is happening in tandem with this conversation with the planet Uranus. So Uranus, planet of upheaval, liberation, quick changes, sudden insights, all of that, is squaring the eclipse, right? So it's lending even more of that plot twist energy to the eclipse. So Leo Leo energy is all about our creative self-expression, right? Our individual creative spark, our our sense of uniqueness and specialness in the world. So Leo connects us really to our inner child. And it wants to be, that Leo energy in all of us wants to be validated and valued and recognized, right? And praised and loved and all of that. And at its best, Leo gives what it gets in that regard. It loves to take care of its, if you think of, lions, Leo is obviously the symbol is the lion, loves to take care of its pride, of its tribe, of its bloodline. Think of royalty, right? Taking care of their own kind of thing. And then the shadow side of Leo is, it can be very dramatic, very arrogant, childish, attention-seeking, self-centered, even narcissistic. If it's not getting its needs met, its needs for recognition and love and attention and all of that, then it can be prone to, pouting or sort of childish tantrums and behavior. And I'm going to use a pretty obvious example here. Donald Trump is a Leo rising. And so this sort of, we really see this shadow side of Leo coming out there. We see that often from him. So I mentioned to you that the eclipse is in a square to Uranus, right? So that's lending to that, the amping up sort of the emotional ups and downs and the general plot twist energy. And Uranus, as I mentioned, it brings liberation and uncertainty and sudden change and all of that. But I want to focus on that word liberation, because it really, at its best, I think this can be about the liberating of our sort of unique self, or of our inner child, Leo. So it's good for embracing sort of the spontaneity of our inner child, right? For honoring our heart. And really being guided by our heart and doing what speaks to our heart, embracing what speaks to our heart, regardless of the rules kind of thing. That doesn't mean we go, damaging other people in the process, though. So, just be mindful of your emotions. And if you're not getting your needs met, or if there are sort of things bubbling up from your inner child kind of thing that need to be acknowledged, just be careful of the potential for, kind of tantrums, emotional outbursts, that kind of thing, because it can happen. And if it does happen, I've been pretty emotional and snappy the last couple of days, admittedly. So if that happens, it's like you need to do some unpacking of that, right? Like, where is that coming from? Is it really about what you think it's about, kind of thing? Or is there something deeper going on? What are any sort of intense emotions or anxieties or fears or anger that may be coming up for you around this time? What are the messages there? What is that trying to tell you? So acknowledge and honor that, right? And it's really good time for releasing it in a creative and loving way. The other thing that's happening here that can be potentially really helpful at this time is that the eclipse the moon is trining Chiron. So Chiron's in Pisces. And so this can be cathartic release, right? So that Leo inner child energy is breaking through and breaking free. It's kind of acknowledging, it's saying like, I'm hurt, or I need this, or pay attention to me. And so sort of healing our inner child, or any victim mentality we may have, or our connection to spirit, restoring our faith that the universe has our back, right, is on offer for us right now. And then we have Mars in Aries that's squaring Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn at the time of the eclipse. So just briefly, that's about challenges, right? It may be a challenging time, but we need to find creative solutions. That's what squares are about. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a really good overview of the eclipse energy. And if you have any questions, please ask them in the comments below. And I'd be happy to answer them. It's likely that somebody else may have the same question as you. And I just want to talk now. I'm going to go through each of the signs, speaking to rising sign first and foremost, right? Again, I always say to you, for these general forecasts, listen for your rising sign, because you may get a clearer picture of how this is playing out in the real world for you. It's more accurate when we're just talking about a general forecast like this, right? I'm not looking specifically at your individual chart. But then also listen for your sun sign, because that'll give you an added layer of information, and your moon sign as well. And the moon really resonates with our emotions, right? So as you've heard me mention, and so you may get a sense of how that the energy is playing out for you on a more sort of emotional, internal level. So what I'm going to say to you here, to each of the signs, it's going to give you an idea of what specific life area that this Leo eclipse has been happening for you, and the axis of the Leo-Aquarius eclipses that are finishing up their cycle now, right? So you might already, as I said, have an inkling as to what this is kind of about, right? Or where you've been impacted by the eclipses to date. And before I launch into each sign, I want to reiterate, I want to remind you, it's not a great time for doing anything super impulsive right now. So take the time to process your feelings and work through them. Honor your individual creative spark, your inner child, your sense of uniqueness, rather than sort of stomping your feet and rebelling at not getting your needs met, right? Or being, you know, in sort of like protesting in a childlike way, or a frustrating way, or an I'll show you kind of way. That's not the best way to use this energy. So, I didn't show you the chart. I'm so sorry. And let me do that quickly before we go into each of the signs, because I'm just going to talk to you. You've got a really good overview here, so I'm just briefly going to go through what life area this is happening. But first, here's the chart for the day of the eclipse. See all that dynamic energy, right? If you've had a chart reading with me before, or you may have heard me mention here, those red lines are these more challenging dynamic conversations happening between the planets. And holy smokes, look at that, right? So it's a very dynamic time around the time of this eclipse. So here we've got the sun at 0 degrees Aquarius, opposite the moon at 0 degrees Leo, right? And the earth will be passing between those. And then we have Uranus in Aries, which is making a square here, right? And then you've got, there's the south node in Capricorn and the north node in Cancer down there, right near the eclipse as well. So those are the important things. Oh, I mentioned Chiron too. There is Chiron just at the very end of Pisces. So Chiron at the end of Pisces, Uranus at the end of Aries, the eclipse cycle in Leo-Aquarius finishing out, the nodes of the moon just shifting into Cancer, Capricorn. This is some big change energy happening that we're in the midst of right now. Endings and beginnings, right? This is what's going on. All right, let's talk to each of the signs. And I will start at the beginning. I've been trying to kind of do it that way lately, if I remember. Sometimes it just makes it easier for you to follow along. But I really hope that you listen to the intro and the preamble, because it's really important for the rest of it to make sense. So, Aries rising, Aries sun, Aries moon, right? This is the Leo eclipse is happening for you in the 5th house. Leo is at home in the 5th house, actually. And this is about romance, creativity, the pleasures in life. It's about children and your inner child as well, right? So you may, see in retrospect something that has transpired in these life areas, one or more of these life areas. Like take children, for example. Maybe there has been some major kind of shifts and changes happening with your own children, and that's reaching a culmination point right now, or a release of some sort. Or maybe you're going to get news of, a family member having a baby, or being pregnant, or maybe you as well, or news around having children, that kind of thing could be possible, or a major new creative project, right? Something that you've been hoping for, that's finally coming to fruition now. So Aries, that's for you. And Taurus, this eclipse is happening in your 4th house. So Leo sits in the 4th house for you, Taurus. And this could be news, either from or about a family member. And I often think, because the moon rules the 4th house, right? And I often think it's a female family member, or somebody with sort of more feminine qualities, kind of thing. The mother, but that mother archetypal energy kind of thing. It doesn't specifically have to be the mother. This could be changes in the home or living situation, right? Or it could be deep emotional release, having to do with perhaps something to do with the family or ancestral trauma, that kind of thing. So something's going on, and has been going on, in that area of life for you, Taurus. And so it's reaching this culmination point. And you may see some kind of, sort of plot twist happen around the time of the eclipse. Gemini, this is happening for you in your 3rd house. So Leo sits in the 3rd house for you. And the 3rd house is actually your home house, Gemini. And it's all about communications, right? All things communications. Our thinking, our modes of communication, emails, text messages, writing. So maybe you're going to get some kind of surprise message, an email or a text or something. Or there's like a publishing opportunity. Maybe you've been working, maybe the thing for you is you've been working on some kind of writing, and now it's reaching this culmination point of it's, going to be published, and something happens in that regard. This could be like some short trip or commute bringing about some unexpected development. This could be news from siblings or peers or cousins, kind of thing as well. So something involving those life areas. That's what this eclipse in Leo is touching on for you. Cancer, this is in your 2nd house. So this is about your money, your resources, your values, your self-worth. And there's some kind of major shift happening here. Perhaps a money-making opportunity. Perhaps something happens that really majorly boosts your self-esteem, right? Or your self-worth. Or something changes in terms of your values, your core values. That's what's going on for you, Cancer. And then Cancer, the eclipses are now moving into your sign, right? And so you're going to really be feeling that energy over the next couple of years. So stay tuned, and I'll be talking about them more as we move forward. Leo, this is your eclipse. This is the big grand finale, Leo, for you. So something's been transpiring for the last couple of years for you, no doubt. And this is about yourself. It's about your way of being in the world. It's about how you are perceived. It's about your image, right? Even your physical appearance. And it's about your individual needs versus your sort of relationship needs. So something has been transpiring. There have been some changes, some shifts, some upheaval, some kind of course correction, happening for you in regards to those things. And so you may have been through some difficulty, but all for a good reason. And so now we're reaching this point, Leo, where it's like, the final hurrah kind of in regards to these things. You're really coming out, you know? This is like your coming out party kind of thing, Leo. That's sort of the way I see this, right? So I'd love to know, I mean, I do have many people with Leo energy in my life, and I know what they have been going through over the last couple of years. So I kind of get a sense of what this has been about for you, Leo. But if you're somebody that has strong Leo energy in your chart, I'd be really curious to know what's transpiring for you and what has. Okay, moving on to Virgo. So Virgo, this is like a major release on an internal level because it's happening in the 12th house, right? Leo sits in the 12th house for you, Virgo rising. This can be about secrets being released, healed, let go of. It can be about patterns of self-sabotage being liberated. It can be, and it can have something to do about how you spend time in solitude, right? The life you live in solitude. So your need for rest and alone time. There can be some kind of major shift in your spirituality, something that's been sort of transpiring over the last couple of years. So I'm a Virgo rising. I'm familiar with this energy. Lots has been going on internally. I've really needed a lot of alone time over the last couple of years, a lot of processing going on. You know, a lot of unconscious things coming up for release and healing for me over the last couple of years. And so, you know, been in some pretty cathartic therapy for the last couple of years. And so it could be something like that for you, Virgo. This is something more on an internal level, though, not necessarily something that the external world is seeing or has seen over the last couple of years. All right, moving on to Libra. Libra, this is happening in your 11th house. And so Libra, this is like some kind of shift or plot twist in terms of your friendship dynamics or group dynamics in general, right? And like any group that you're associated with, whether that could be anything from a friendship group to a team to a political party to some kind of charitable organization or volunteer organization, something like that. So this is the life area that has been the focus of these eclipses. One of the life areas opposite Aquarius. And this is where this Leo final grand finale is happening for you, Libra. Scorpio, this is happening in your 10th house. So Leo's been in your 10th house, or Leo is in your 10th house. These eclipses have been happening, at least part in the 10th house, 10th and 4th houses for you over the last couple years. This is about your public image, your career ambitions and aspirations, your relationship to authority. So this is what the eclipse is sort of touching on, and we're going to have that grand finale happening around now for you, Scorpio. Whatever's been transpiring there. Sag, this is in your 9th house. So this is about travel. It's about foreign people and places and cultures. It's about philosophy and higher learning and teaching and publishing. So some major shifts and changes have been happening over the last couple years in this area of life. And this is where this eclipse energy is finishing up for you right around now. And you may reach some kind of culmination point, you know, in you know, maybe taking some big trip that you've been planning for a while. That could be one thing. Capricorn, this is happening in your 8th house. So this is about your shared resources and things like your taxes and your debt and your insurance and inheritances, business investments even. Also has to do with your psychological depths, right? Those places where we're kind of vulnerable. So something's been transpiring in relation to these things over the last couple of years. And with this final eclipse in Leo, this will reach some kind of release, culmination, plot twist point for you, Capricorn. And then Aquarius. Aquarius, this is happening in your 7th house, right? So this is the house of partnership, close personal relationships. Have been going through this change, transformation, you know, upheaval, that kind of thing. This can be your close one-to-one relationship, or it can have to do with rivalries as well. Something has transpired there and has been. And it's, again, whatever this is reaching the culmination point. And Pisces, this is happening in your 6th house. And so this has to do, Pisces, with your daily routine, with your well-being, your daily workload, right? Including any unpaid work that you do. So, you know, if you're like a stay-at-home mom, for example, then a lot has been going on in this area of life for you over the last couple of years. There's been changes, there's been struggles, there's been shifts and hard work and upheaval. And this is reaching this release point, this culmination point for you at this time, Pisces. Okay, so that's all 12 signs, and I really want to know what's going on for you. So if you'd love, I would love it if you would share in the comment section below, and I'll be back to kind of talk about my own experience a little bit more perhaps next week, okay? And of course the astrology of what's happening then as well. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.